To start working on Infurnia, go to login.infurnia.com, and herein you can log in using your Google mail ID by continue with Google, or you can log in using any other mail ID that you have. I'll continue with Google here, and herein you'll get the pop-up to sign in where you can select whichever account you want to sign in via. Under choose organization, you'll be able to find the name of the organization that you work for. I will be logging into Rishiparna store, which is my personal account. So when I click on the same, this particular organization's portal opens up. You have the option here which is new project, and when you click on the same, you will get a modal wherein you'll be asked to input the project name, client name and project ID. And I click on create project. Now you can see that a folder has been created wherein I can create multiple designs for this particular project. If I click on start new design, the first pop-up that will appear will ask you to select a template according to which you want to design. You can use the room option here or a blank template to start your designing. We will select the blank template here. A new design file is created with the blank template. The workspace is primarily divided into first the level navigator, wherein you can select in which level you want to view your design, starting from room, floor to building and the entire model. Next you have the toolbar, wherein all your tools are located and segregated as per the use case. Then there is the design panel wherein all your details will be shown. Whenever you select any particular cabinet or panel, the details of the same will be shown in the design panel. Then you have the global preferences and settings, which you will get into as well. And herein you have the different modes where you can keep switching during your work, which is the floor plan view, 3D view and the elevation view. And this is your drafting space wherein you will be doing your entire modeling. When you start any new project, the first thing that you should be doing is setting your preferences. On the left bottom of your screen, under global preferences and settings, you have an option called preferences. When you click on the same, you will be able to see the select the preference option, wherein if you click on the drop down, you can see in which section you want to set your preferences. The first thing you should be setting is your wall, which means all the walls that you will be creating using the wall tool under architecture will have these particular preferences attached. Here you can specify what is the height of the walls that you want to create. Then comes the thickness of your wall. I'll be going with the composite of 150 mm here. Secondly, you should be setting the preferences under kitchen. So when you select kitchen, you will be able to see the different components of a kitchen cabinet, which is carcass, shutter, handle, countertop, skirting and the basic construction. So when I go into carcass, I can specify the core material, the back core material, external, internal finish and the different types of edge bands to be used. So let's say if I want to specify the core material of the carcass, then I can toggle this as on and the carousel opens up wherein you can select what core material you want to specify. So if you want BWR ply or HDHMR or particle board, you can select from the same. And this particular information is coming from the admin portal wherein your organization would have specified the available core materials in their catalog itself. Once you have specified everything, let's start modeling your kitchen. So let's say this is the floor plan that you have. So in this case, I have a JPEG image of the floor plan that I want to draft. So I will add that to my workspace and use it as a reference, either to trace over it or to use it as a ready reference. Under global preferences and settings again, I have an option floor. So when I select the same, herein you have the tracing background option, which when you click on the drop down next to it, you get the option of either selecting an image or a DWG file to upload. So here I will select an image and I will select the upload change image option. So when I select this, the storage of my computer opens up, and herein let's say I can select whichever image I want to import. Let's say I'm importing the kitchen floor plan here, and I click on open. So as you can see, this image is now added to my floor plan. The first room that I'll be creating is the utility, which has a dimension of 1500 into 3925 mm. So what I'll do is that I will go into the architecture option here, wherein I have all my drafting tools. I'll be selecting the tool wall and clicking on the same. When you click on the option outside, you will be selecting straight walls by default. But if you want to do any other type of wall, you can click on the drop down option, and you can go into curved walls and room dividers also. We will go into the same in some time. So let's say first I'm selecting straight wall, and their preferences are already set. So it is selecting the same. That is, it is selecting 2700 mm as the height and 150 mm as the thickness. So now I will start drafting my wall. I need to create a room of 1500 cos 3925. I'll click on my workspace for the starting point of my wall, and once you click here, your wall starts getting generated, and you can specify what is the length of that wall by inputting the value in your keyboard. I'll input 1500, which is the length of that particular wall. Press enter, and that particular wall will be created. The next wall, and when you want to create the next wall, you can angle the wall in a 90 degree by moving downwards, and you can see that it snaps in a straight wall at a 90 degree angle. So herein you can see that there is a blue dotted line which is visible. This is the location line. A location line basically acts as the reference line, and we can specify on which direction of that line the wall is created, since the wall has a thickness to be considered. You can change the location line rapidly while modeling by selecting the space button on your keyboard, and it will change to left, right and center. And as per your requirement, you can keep shifting and select as to where you want your location line to be drawn. Like suppose, since I have put this dimension as 1500 mm, I would want my location line to be on the left side and my wall to be drawn on the right side, and hence I have selected it accordingly by selecting space. So now when I am inputting the value of 3925, the dimension will be correct. So as you can see, this is a dimension now drawn, and again I will be inputting 1500, or I can select here and it will snap to the same line as well. I can go up and select the start point of my first wall, and it will create an entire enclosure. So like you can see, as soon as an enclosure of 4 walls was created, a room tag appeared here. So now you can see that the 3 rooms are created. I've also added one more room here which will act as a living space, and we will start designing our model here. So this is your floor plan mode. You can select the 3D option here, and as you can see, your entire model that you had created till now for walls is already created in 3D as well. Next comes your level navigators. The level navigators basically indicate as to which level you want to view your model in. Let's say I want to view the model at room level. So I can select any of the rooms. Let's say I'm selecting room 1. Then it will show me only room 1. Like you can see, it shows me room 1 only. Then if I want to see the entire ground floor, you can see the entire ground floor by selecting this. Now let's understand as to how to specify these rooms. Let's say I'm going into room 1. So when I select the room label here by clicking on this, then the room settings open up. Herein you can specify the name of the room, and you can also specify what type of room it is. So I will specify that this is a kitchen. Secondly, you can also show the area of that room in this particular view. Like you can basically select show here, and you can see that the utilities dimension will be shown here, 1500 into 3850, which was our dimension. The other rooms, room 2, 3 and 4 also, we will correct accordingly. Now I want my kitchen to be an open kitchen, and I do not want this wall in my design at all. However, I want a segregation for this particular room. So what I'll be doing is that, let's say I'll just select the wall and I will click on delete, and this wall gets removed. Under walls, I have an option of room divider. So I'll select the same and I will draw a line to demarcate the space. So I'll click on the start point here and I'll click on the end point here. Now you can see that there are two areas that is demarcated. So let's see in 3D how this is looking. So when I'm selecting rooms and all, I can see another room 4, but there is no physical wall that is added. Next, let's understand how to add doors and windows. So for this utility, I want to add a door. So I'll select the door option here, and you will see the door demarcation on any of the walls when you hover over it. Click on the same space and a door will be added here. So like you can see, a door is now added. Let's check this in 3D. If I want to make any changes in the design of the door or the size of the door, I can select the door here, and all the properties like width, thickness, height of the door appears in the design panel. This is a typical behavior in Infurnia, that whenever you select anything like a wall or a cabinet, all the properties of the same appear in the design panel and you can make the changes there. If you want to change the model of the door, then you can select the change model option here, and the carousel shows a lot of options for door designs. Since it's a utility, I'll go ahead and select door 4, which looks a bit more appropriate for a utility. Adding windows is very much similar to adding doors, and you can select the window option and you can place it wherever you want. In this case, I want to place it at the center, and I will click on the same and the window is added. So when I select the window again, all the details on the window opens up here. In case you want to change the width of the window further, you can double click on the dimension here and change the dimension. Let's say I'm making 2100 mm, and the window will increase in width. So when you select the window again, you can see that it's 2100 mm here. Similarly, even for walls, if you select a wall, then the inner wall to wall dimension is shown here, and when you double click on the same, you can make any changes to it if you want. Let's say I want it to be 800 mm, then the internal dimension increases. Let's add a ceiling to your particular design. So I can select the ceiling tool here, and the ceiling sketcher mode opens up. Herein you have an option of pick tool, which dynamically picks the edges of the selected area. So if I select the pick tool here and I hover over any space, then it dynamically selects the edges of that particular open space. So as you can see, a ceiling area is now demarcated here, and if you click on apply, then the ceiling will be created for the kitchen. Let's say I'm going into 3D option here. A ceiling is never shown in the floor option. So if you want to see a ceiling, you will have to go into the exact room. So I've added it in the kitchen. So when I go into the kitchen, you can see that there is ceiling now added to it. How to add a tiling? So again, you can select the tiling option, and just like the ceiling sketcher mode, the tiling sketcher mode opens up, and herein you can use the pick wall lines and room space option, and you can select the space that you want. Then this space will get selected. So when I click on apply, so when I select the tile again, all the details of this particular tile is shown, like the tile depth. Let's say for my particular design, I want to change the tile size, and I want to make it 1200 by 1200. So I can select the width and height of the same and click on set. And I want to change the material, so I'll select the material here in the warehouse option. I'll fetch from store, and herein you can see all the options that you have. Any of the lighter shades, which is a autumn white. Now if you have to add columns and beams over this, then you can do the same by going into the architectural tool again, and here you have column option. So you can use the cuboidal columns for any square or rectangular profiled columns that you have. And if you want to create any circular options, then you can use the profile column. So I'll be using the cuboidal columns, and I'll select the same, and it will start showing the outline once you start hovering over your model, and you can simply click here to get it inserted. So what I'll do is that I'll insert one column here and one more column, which will be added in the other corner. Let's check this in 3D. You can see that the columns are now added in 3D as well. So when you select the beam tool, you can again click and place the beam here, and you can see in 3D that a beam is added. And if you want to increase the size of the beam, then you can go into the floor plan and you can select on the resize tool that appears around it. Just select the same and drag to increase the size of the beam. So when you see it in the 3D, you can see that the beam is also now created. You can see all your beams and columns are added in this design. Let's say I want to create a cutout in this wall. So what I will do is that I'll select this particular wall and I'll go into tiling and cutting tool here. So the elevation outline of this wall is now shown in the sketcher mode, in which I can add shape by selecting this tool, and I can draft using any of the available line and arc tools and create a shape of which I want the cutout to be done. So I'll select line and you can apply this shape, and again select this particular shape, and in the properties of it you can select and type as cut, and you can specify what depth you want the cut to be. Considering that the thickness of the walls is 150 mm that we had considered, I will be putting the depth as 150 mm so that the cut is through and through. So I have put 150 mm, and now I'll go out of the sketcher mode, and you can see that the cutout created. I want to have an arch-like curve here so that my design is more aesthetic. So I'll select the wall again and go into the tiling and cutting tool. Now I'll select the shape and go into edit shape again. So here I'll use the fillet option, and I will select the two lines which I want to fillet, and then I'll specify the dimension that I want the fillet to be of. So I'll put 900 mm. So you can see that the arch is now created. So now I'll apply this, and then I will go back, and as you can see the arch is now created. So all the beams are in one layer. So when I go into the layer set here, I can turn off the visibility of the beam area, and while I add the base units, I do not need to see the beams. What I will do is that I will go into the room view. I have to furnish the kitchen, so I'll go into the room view, and here I will start furnishing first with base units. Go into insert, then furnish, and under kitchen furniture you can find base units. Under base units, you can see that you have multiple types of base units in the subcategories. So whatever you have added from the warehouse into your catalog will be shown in this particular carousel, and you can select any cabinet that you want and drop it into your model. So let's say I am starting with corner units, and I'll be adding a corner unit with one shelf. I'm selecting this from my carousel, and as soon as you select it, it starts appearing in your model, and when you place it in your model, it aligns itself to the wall correctly. So the orientation is by default correct. So once you have defined the location where it needs to be dropped, you can click on the position again, and the cabinet will be added in your particular design. You can drop these cabinets in 3D mode and in floor plan mode. And as you can see, this is the cabinet that has been already added, and you can furnish it in the floor plan mode as well by going into the same furnish base unit. And let's say now I will be adding pull out units. I'll add a spice pull out unit of 3 tire, and I'm selecting the same, and I'm dropping it into the model. So you can see that it snaps to the corner as well, and this is a 150 mm unit. If I want to change the width of the same, then you can select the cabinet and you will get the option of changing the width in the design portal, wherein you can make changes to it. Like let's say I'm making it a 300 mm unit. So you can see this in 3D, that these units are getting added in 3D as well. And you can also see that the shutter finish, the countertop skirting, everything has been added as per the preferences that we had set. Just like base units, under kitchen furniture you have tall unit, wall units, etc. as well. So let's say if you want to add any tall unit, then you can select the same, and the different types of tall units also are displayed in your carousel. So you can pick and drop all this in your design and create the entire set of cabinets that you require. So when you're adding any unit, as you can see, this is the category of the units that you want to add, which is the base unit. Then there are multiple subcategories that you can select from, like shutter unit, drawer unit, etc. And all these are different groups under drawer, different types of drawers basically, meaning one drawer unit, two drawer, three drawer. So you can see the different types of design. So these are groups that you can select from, and in these groups you have a drop down here where you can select the exact SKU with the exact size that you need as well. You can of course customize it in your design portal again, but the most generic sizes that are required, like 450, 600, 900, are usually available in our warehouse, and you can specify whichever you want. Let's say I want a 3 drawer unit of 900 mm, so I will select the same and I will click on this and add this in my design. So you can select the exact size as well by clicking on the drop down next to it. So while modeling, sometimes you might also need to check dimensions. So you can go into home, and herein you have the measure tool. So when you select the same, you can measure between 2 points. So if I want to measure what is the space left so that I can decide how many more cabinets to add, I can click on any 2 points and the distance between those 2 points will be shown to us, and I can decide as per that whatever cabinets I need to add. So while designing, you would need to add fillers in certain areas and adjust shutter widths as well. So you can go into furnish, and under all you'll have another option which is a filler, and you can open the same and you'll get base fillers, tall unit fillers and wall fillers. So I'll be going ahead and selecting a front panel. So I'll select the front panel and I'll get it added. So as you can see, there's only one panel that is added in this case, but when you are selecting the left and front panel, in case you need a left panel as well as a front panel, then it will show here. You can see that there is a left panel and there's a front panel as well. So I'll be selecting the same, and I will be selecting on the rotate tool over the cabinet and rotating it as per my requirement by 90 degree, and then I will move it into the location that I want. If I look at this in 3D, I can see that I need to reduce the size of my shutter in the blind corner unit as well. So when I select the cabinet, you can see in dimension a shutter width showing for corner units. But let's say I want to make the shutter into 500 mm, then I can revise the same and it will change to a 500 mm shutter. If you've added your base units and want to move into wall units, you can go into furnish and go into wall units. Under carousel, you'll be able to see all the wall units. So you can select any of the wall units that you want, and let's say I'm dropping this wall unit into my model, and for the first wall unit, to ensure that it's in the correct location and height, you can go into floor plan and ensure that this is snapping exactly onto the base unit dimension so that this is correct. What about the elevation? So what you can do is that you can select this particular cabinet, and herein you will have the position and rotation option where you can change the dimension of Y to 1472. So now this is exactly correct, and you will get a space in between your countertop and your wall cabinet, which will be 600 mm for the dado tile. If there is any other size of dado tile that you require, you can accordingly calculate the same. You should also at this point go into preferences and go into cabinet, wherein you'll get the elevation option. Here you can specify the wall unit elevation as 1472, so that all the wall units that you add hereafter will have an elevation of 1472 by default, and will get added correctly. So now if I go into furnish and wall unit, let's say I'm adding this dish rack unit here, and I will snap it next to the first cabinet which I had corrected. So in this way you can keep adding your cabinets next to each other. You can also go into the floor plan mode and add it. If you want to use the same cabinet in two locations, then you can simply select the cabinet and use Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and another cabinet will be added in your model. This I can probably rotate if I require and place it as per my requirement. Like I'm placing it here. So as you can see in 3D, the same unit was placed here as well. Now that I have added my cabinets in base, wall and tall units, etc., I want to add a breakfast counter in the center. I'll go into floor plan. I want to ensure that the breakfast counter matches with this particular cabinet. Under draw, you have the line tool, and I'll draw a reference line here, and I'll go into insert, and I'll go into furnish again and do base units, and I'll add drawer units here of 3 drawer units, and I will snap it at this point itself. Now this base unit is now added. I want it to face towards the hop side, so I will rotate it such that it faces towards the hop side. Like you can see, this is the shutter side. So I have added this cabinet here, and I also want to align it to this particular cabinet here. So I will again go into draw and draw a line from this point till here as a reference, and I will select this cabinet and move it here. So now when you see the 3D, you can see that there are 3 cabinets that are added in this particular area now. Now I want this island kitchen, the countertop for the same, I want to have an extension here so that I can make it into a breakfast counter. So what I'll do is I'll select the cabinets, and herein under countertop you have the extension option, and you can extend it. Here you are extending it towards the back. So let's say I want to extend the breakfast counter by 200 mm. So you can see that the extension is created of 200 mm here. For the other 2 cabinets also, I'll create an extension. So now you can see that the entire countertop is extended. Now if you look at the particular breakfast counter, you can see that the skirtings here are not completely added, because initially we had selected that only the front side to be visible for skirtings. The same issue is here in all the end units as well. So what you can do is that you can select that particular cabinet, and in construction you'll have the skirting option, and when you click on the drop down here, you have the skirting visibility option, and you can turn on which side visibility you want for that particular cabinet. For this cabinet, I want the left side to be visible, so I'll select left, and the left side skirting will also be visible now. So now you can see wherever required, the skirting has been added. Another customization that you might require is that the left panel of these 2 cabinets might need to be in a different finish for aesthetic purposes. So what I can do is I can select this particular panel here, and I can go into the panel option, and I can mark it as exposed panel. When I mark it as an exposed panel, it takes the same finish as that is available in the shutter. If you want to add the shutter design to it as well, then you can select the panel again and go into the panel option, and you have the shutter design option, and you can go into normal, and in the carousel that is available, you can select the same shutter design that you want, which you had added in the other shutters as well. So I'm selecting the same shutter design here, and this will also have the same finish as the rest of the panels. While I have marked this panel as an exposed panel, what it does is that it adds the finish of the cabinet to the left panel of the carcass. It does not add another end panel to it. But if I want to add a separate panel to the carcass itself, then what I can do is that I can select the cabinet and go into construction, and herein we have a end panel option, which when you select, you can specify whether you want an additional end panel to the left hand side or the right hand side. So in this case, I'll be adding the left hand side, and you can see another panel is added here. So in this way, you can add an end panel as well. If you need to extend the countertop after that, you can select the countertop and go into the countertop option here, and you have the extension option again, and herein you can extend the left to, let's say, another 50 mm, and the countertop will get extended. Now as you can see, for this breakfast counter, the back side is not finished, and I want to add an additional panel here. I do not want to change the finish of the back panel to an exposed panel, but I want to add a complete panel here properly. So what I'll do is that I'll insert, go to furnish, and I will go into all, wherein I have a custom panel option as well, and herein I have horizontal custom panels and vertical custom panels. So I will go ahead and select a vertical custom panel since I want it to be standing upright, and I will add the base unit here, which I will insert it into my design. And once it is inserted, you can see that this is the custom panel that is inserted. And I'll select the custom panel and I will rotate it here by 90 degree. In rotation and position, I'll rotate it by 90 degree. So now this is correct. I will change the dimensions of this also to, I'll open the dimension tab here, and I can see that the dimension that will be required will be the height of the cabinets, which are 720, and the width of these 3 cabinets, which is together 1800. So what I'll do is that the width of the same I'll change to 720 mm, and the depth of the same I'll change to 1800 mm. So now you can see that this particular panel is ready. Then I'll go into the position option here, and I will change the y coordinates here to exactly fit the area. I have a 12 mm thickness of the tile, which is already shown as 12 in the y axis, and I also have a 100 mm skirting, for which I need to add the elevation custom panel. So I'll change it into 112 and I will click on enter. So now the elevation is correct. Then I'll go into the floor plan option and I will place it exactly behind these cabinets. Now when I'm placing it, to place it accurately, I will use the offset tool. So I'll go into home, and herein I have an offset tool. So whenever you want to move any particular cabinet, panel or any 3D object very accurately, you can use the offset tool. When you select the offset tool, you need to select the 2 points between which you want the movement to be. So I'll select the corner point of this panel here, and I will select the edge point of the cabinet here. So now you can see that this is exactly inserted in the required space, and let's go into 3D and see. You can see that the panel is correctly added here. So now our panel is ready. Now this particular panel, I want to give it the same finish as the rest of my cabinets. Then I can simply go into this panel, and herein under materials I can make the change as per my requirement. Whichever finish you have used in your cabinets, you can use the same here. Now let's add dado tiling to my design. So I'll select any wall where I want to add the dado tile, and I'll go into cutting and tiling tool here. So herein you can see the elevation of the cabinets that you have added for reference, and you can add a shape, and using the line tool here you can draw the outline of the tile that you want. So in this way I'm drawing the outline of the tile, and as you can see, like we had previously calculated, the dimension of the tiling here is 600 mm. So I will apply the same, and I'll select this particular shape and give it a property of tiling. Now when I go back, you can see that the dado tile is now added here. Similarly, you can add the dado tiles in the rest of the areas as well. Now let's say you want to modify the cabinets that you have installed. If you want to modify the materials of any cabinet, you can select the cabinet that you want, and all the details of the cabinet appears in the design portal. Herein, let's say you want to change the carcass internal finish, then you can change the external finish here or the internal finish as per your requirement. You can see internal finish here and external finish. By default, it takes the finish that we had added earlier, but if you want to make any changes, you can do so here. So let's say I am selecting this open and I am going into the internal finish option here. I can open the carousel by going into the store. So like you can see, the internal finish of this cabinet gets modified. If you want to make changes in multiple cabinets together, then you can use the control key in your keyboard, and while continuously pressing on it, you can make multiple selections of cabinets by clicking on those cabinets, and all those cabinets get selected. So let's say I'm selecting these 5 cabinets. Then in these 5 cabinets, I can go into the common properties of the selection, and I can open the drop down here, and I can change the material, skirting, countertop, whatever changes I require. When you select the cabinet, you have multiple options here about. You also have options of changing the handle if you want. You can go into shutter and change the handle that you require. The existing handle will be shown here, and you can make any changes to it if you want. However, when I am designing this kitchen, this breakfast counter is acting as a hindrance in my modeling of the rest of the kitchen. So what I can do is I can go into the floor plan mode, and I will click on the right side of the mouse and create an enclosed and create a selection box, and the entire cabinets on all elements along with it will get selected. So I'll go into layers and I'll add a new layer here, and I'll name it as a breakfast counter. I'll just create the layer here and I will allocate, and these particular selections I have the option of grouping option here. I'll group the element and I'll change the default layer breakfast counter. This particular layer, I'll go into the layer set again and I'll turn off the visibility of the breakfast counter. Now this breakfast counter is hidden and I can go ahead and furnish the rest of the kitchen to add a hob unit here. So I'll select this particular cabinet, and here in the countertop I'll open the drop down next to it and I have an option of adding accessories to them. So I'll add accessory, and herein we have the option of hob, and I can select this particular element and I can add any hob that I want. Let's say I'm using this particular hob and it gets added to that particular cabinet. Another element that you want to add might be your chimney. So you can go into insert and furnish, and herein you have an option of chimney. You can open the same and you can add any chimney that you want. We have ceiling mounted and wall mounted options. So I'll go for a wall mounted option here and I'll add any chimney that I require. I've changed it into 700 mm width and I'm placing it as per my requirement here. Now in certain cabinets I want to have glass shutters added. So I'll select the cabinet, and herein when I go into the shutter, I'll have shutter design options. So when I select the same, I can change the shutter here and I can select whichever shutter I want. I want to have an aluminum shutter here, so I'll select the aluminum shutter option here. Wherever you want to have a different type of shutter, you can select the same. If you want to remove the handle of the same, then you can simply select the handle option here and you can click on the remove option and it will get removed. If you want to change the shutter mechanism of any particular cabinet, let's say this particular cabinet is opening as a swing cabinet, but I want to have it as a hydraulic lift up. So I'll select the cabinet and I'll go into shutter systems, and herein I have an option of shutter mechanism. In the drop down option you have a lot of mechanisms here which you can select from. If you want to have a single lift up, you can select the same and it will turn into a lift up shutter. In this way you can modify any shutter that you want into the kind of mechanism that is required for your design. Let's add some cabinet lights inside these. So I'll open the same and I'll select the panel on which I want to add a cabinet light, and I'll go into the panel tab here, and here you have the option of light which you can turn on, and you will see the option of cabinet lights here, and you can select whichever cabinet light you want. I would like to select light 2. You can see a cabinet light is added here. You can also add strip lights to your cabinet. You simply have to select the bottom panel where you want to add the strip light, and you can go into the panel again and you can add the strip light here. So I'll just turn it on and you get the option of strip light. So you can select the same and the strip light will get added. But if you want to move it towards the back, then you can select the strip light again and the furniture light option will come in here, and you can change the position of this according to your requirement. So right now you can see that the position is at 240 mm, and if I want to change it, I can change it to 50. Now let's add some countertop props so that the design looks more lively. So I'll select this particular cabinet and I'll go into the countertop option here, and I can add accessories. I can add kitchen props here, wherein I have a lot of kitchen props that are available. Let's say I'm putting couple of canisters. So as you can see, these are now added. You can add as many props as you want. You can also add some dado tile props that you want, like you can go into insert, you can go into furnish, and in all you have kitchen props also as an option. So herein, if you want to add any dado accessories or wall unit accessories, you can add the same. So let's say I'm adding some dado accessories here of a glass plate rack. So I can select the same and I can place it on my dado tile. So if you select any particular wall, you have the wall finish option here, wherein you can go into the store and select any particular wall finish that you want, whether you want a wallpaper or a wall paint. Then if I select this particular shade, then the wall color will change accordingly. Add any furniture that you want by going into insert and going into furnish. you will have more furnitures in your all option. And suppose if I want to add any bar stools, then I'll go into the chair option here, wherein I can search for bar stools by typing in the search button, and I can see that there are two bar stools on the stool. So I can go into the same and I can select the bar stool that I want. I'm selecting this particular bar stool. So as you can see, this bar stool is now added. In case you want to change the fabric that is used in the bar stool, you can select the bar stool and you can change the material that is used by going into materials option, and you can select on the change material here, and you can see any of the leather options that you have. Let's say I'm selecting leather, the brown leather option here. The material is modified. Now in this I'll be adding a chimney panel to hide the duct pipe of the chimney. So I will go into insert, finish, and add a custom panel from here, and I will add a vertical custom panel, a wall unit vertical custom panel. So this gets added here. Then this particular panel, I will select it and I will rotate it by 90°. I will correct the size of this panel as well by going into the dimension. I want the width of the particular panel to be 400 mm and the depth of it to be around 900 mm, which is the size of the chimney. I'll also change the Y coordinates of this panel by going into position and rotation here and changing it into 1672. So now it is correctly positioned in terms of elevation, and then I will go into the floor plan option, and by selecting the offset tool, I will position it exactly to the side of the cabinet. So when I go into the 3D, you can see that this is positioned correctly. Now let's add a false ceiling to my design. So I'll select the ceiling in the room view and go into create false ceiling here. Herein, I can add any shape that I want by using the line tool again. Now when you click on apply, this particular false ceiling shape is created. I can select the shape again and specify the properties of this. When I go back, you can see that the false ceiling is now created. You can also understand how the false ceiling is coming with respect to your cabinets by going into the floor plan mode and going into view, where you can turn on your reflective ceiling. So you can see the outline of the ceiling here, and you can see if the false ceiling is in line with the rest of the cabinet spacing. Now finally, let's add some lights to the entire model. So you can go into insert and select light, and herein you can select ceiling light to add the ceiling lights first. So I'll select this particular ceiling light and I'll get it added to my ceiling. So now this is added in my ceiling. Similarly, I can also add decor lights to my design by going into hanging lights, and herein I can select whichever model I want and add it to my design. By selecting any light, you can go into the customize option here, and under lights you can change the properties of the light, like whether you want it to be a spotlight or a point light, and the intensity and color of the light. For all the lights that we have added, we will make the revisions about how much intensity we wanted, and we will keep the ceiling lights as point lights and the strip lights and cabinet lights as spotlights. The color you can decide according to your requirement, and the intensity of ceiling lights would be around 5 to 7, and for internal cabinet lights can be around 0.5, whereas the strip lights can have an intensity again of 1. You can also go into the material option here, and by selecting the picker tool, pick any material that is available in your model and change the properties of the same. For example, the finish that I have selected is a PU finish, so I will keep the specular at around 0.3 and the roughness at 0, since I want it to have a very smooth finish, and the refractive index can be 1.45. Similarly, you can select any of the other finishes as well, like wall sealing, and make the changes in specular roughness and metalness as per your requirement. Once the material specifications are done, you can go ahead and set the angle of the render that you want to take and go into render and select the resolution of the render that you want to take. You can also confirm the camera positions by going into adjust camera position again and changing it. You can set the aspect ratio as per your requirement as well, and as per the resolution that you want the render to be, you can select the same and fire the render. So you can see that the render is now fired, and when I check in the gallery under HD, I can see there is one render which is in progress. All the other renders that once the render is generated, you can see the same in the gallery, and depending on the resolution that you have selected, the render will be available in that bucket. So as you can see, this is the render that we had generated already. This is another render that we had taken. So using these two renders, we will go. Next, you would also want to generate wall elevation for the purpose of drawing. So you can select the wall which you want to generate the elevation for and go into generate wall section elevation view, and the wall elevation of that particular wall will be generated. You can see that all the cabinets are now shown here, and you can also go into a note and go into align and select add auto dimension, and all the dimensions for that particular drawing would be shown, above which you can make any changes. To generate pricing, simply go into production and select the pricing tool here, and you'll have to specify which floor and room you want the pricing for. I'll be selecting kitchen here and continue, and your pricing will be generated as per the standards that have been put in your admin. You can see the pricing is now generated. You can also add discounts in your quotation, add service line items by adding rows here and adding different sort of line items that you might require. Let's say I'm putting per unit of 300 rupees and quantity 3 and tax of 12%. I'm updating it. Then this will also get added as a service line item in your quotation. Add payment schedules and any custom remarks that you might require in your quotation. And finally, you can download the quotation in the PDF form by selecting the print PDF. Once you select the same, a PDF output will be triggered. You can also download the quotation in CSV format. Finally, let's create a presentation of the design that we have created. You can go into presentation option here, and here you need to choose the template of the presentation, which I'll be choosing from catalog. Here I'll choose template 2, which is, and a new sheet is now created. Here I can add renders by selecting on the image option here, and you can see that the renders that were created are shown here. So I'll go ahead and add 2 renders here. You can also add materials that are used in this particular design by going into materials, and you can select the material that was added. Add text. You can add new sheets as well in the similar manner. And in the new sheet, by going into the design, you can go into the elevation you had created, and here in production you'll get the option of add to presentation. So when you select the same, you can select the sheet that you want to add it to and add to selected sheet. So when you go into that particular sheet, the elevation is now added, so you can resize it as per your requirement, and you can also add relevant production details about the elevation in the next section here by selecting dynamic components, and herein you can define which component you want to add. I would like to add the cabinet details here of elevation 1, so I'll add the same to this particular sheet, and you can see that a dynamic component is now added. This component gives all the details of the cabinets that are here, and you can also use the reference numbers given in the cabinets to see the same. So you can create working drawings of the same very easily by using dynamic components here. And finally, once your presentation is completed, you can download the same in the PDF format by selecting this option. So this is how you can create an entire kitchen very easily on Infurnia.